family. This is Dr. Greg McNeil. Today I want to go back in on a subject that I've touched on before, and that's self-talk. But today I want to turn it around a little bit. I want to change the way we look at self-talk for just a moment. I want you to travel with me while I just share some ideas with you on how we can look at what we call self-talk, inner dialogue, differently. So one of the things for me personally, and what I like to teach when it comes to self-talk, is that we never fail. What? What do you mean? Well, for me, I'm saying we never fail. There's no such thing, only learning. But obviously, to some people, they're going to say that doesn't make sense. Let me put it to you this way. You are preparing for an exam or some other event, but you're nervous. Maybe you've had some difficulties in the past where you may not have been successful in other areas. But you have a way of thinking that just because something happened to you before that was not to your liking, you expect that it's going to happen again. So you prepare yourself, but in the back of your mind, you have something else at work for you. And what's at work for you is the thinking that's supporting the fear that you have, that you're not going to succeed. But you don't know that what you're really saying to yourself, that you fear more the possibility of success than the expectation that you could fail. These two are just not connected at the moment. So anyway, the day of the exam comes and you suddenly notice that you haven't slept the night before, you didn't eat well, maybe your relationships or some other types of family situations are just not working out. But they all contribute to the story of stress and the lack of success. So when you sit for the exam or whatever the opportunity is, you receive the outcome you've been thinking about most of the time. You do not succeed, but you tell yourself you failed. The problem is you didn't. You got exactly what you were thinking about most of the time. The dominant thinking is always the source of the reality we experience. Another example. So we are in relationship situations where we feel vulnerable. We've been hurt before. So we come into the next relationship and we have guards up, right? We have our antennas out. We're looking for that behavior, that indicator, that red flag. And with good reason, we never laugh at the pain that others experience. But what we're saying here still is we have our radars up, our suspicions. Unfortunately, we have our assumptions. These things are guiding the thinking behind the words that we say every day, the actions we attempt to engage in. Now, keep in mind, the self-talk is at work because it's the thing that we believe or you believe is protecting or supporting you. So something happens in a relationship. It starts to have friction and it's familiar to you. And now you're afraid and you begin to engage in behaviors that they just increase your fear. But you don't realize that the fear that you brought with you from yesterday, from your relationship past, and whatever it is that you may not have been able to address is in front of you again. And you suddenly realize that you have the sense that you are experiencing the same thing all over again, just with a different person. How could that be? There's certainly nothing wrong with us. So let's move beyond that, right? Let's not incriminate ourselves, but let's just think about it for a second. Where's that coming from? You see, what we have to learn how to recognize is that the fear of being hurt is a powerful source of energy in our minds, in our lives. We don't want to be hurt. So we'll do any and everything that we can to try to shield ourselves from that. The challenge is when we fail to recognize that all of the energy that we bring forward to protect ourselves from being hurt, from feelings of being vulnerable, are in fact energies that bring our relationship to what looks like a lack of success, an argument, or a breakup. But we still haven't connected to the fact that what we're really producing are the results of what we're thinking. I am afraid this person is going to hurt me. I am afraid this person is going to step out on me. And they may. But what does that have to do with you? You see, if somebody is badly behaved, is it really up to us? Right? Think about that for just a second. I am not saying that we do not correct behavior that we think is inappropriate or anything like that. This is not the point. The point I'm making is it your responsibility to correct someone's bad behavior or their intention that you have no control over? When you realize that the answer to that question is no, it's not your duty to try to control somebody's bad behavior. It's not. It's our responsibility to let others know that we won't accept their bad behavior and that it is not permissible in the relationship that we are in, and whatever that relationship looks like. That is our responsibility. We are accountable to ourselves for that type of action. But that's different than controlling what another person does. And this is how we get back to the subject and the power of what we tell ourselves. When we are afraid of what we think is going to happen to us, that is where we put our energy at. But our psyche is not trying to diminish the power of that feeling, whether or not if you really mean it or you're just afraid. What your psyche knows is that you are thinking a certain way all the time. You are thinking about somebody hurting you. You are thinking about somebody leaving you. You are thinking about not succeeding. You're thinking that you're not maybe worthy, that you cannot have what you want, that on some level, even if you do, it has to be diminished. You pick the framework. But if we don't realize that we are thinking that underneath, we don't realize that that is exactly what we are producing in the external reality, which again, for me, is a success, because what you are getting, what we are all getting, is what we think about most of the time, because our lives does not function any other way. Think about that for just a moment. We are getting what we think about most of the time. And what we are thinking about most of the time is reflected in the actions that we take, the habits that we have, including our thinking and emotional habits. But again, I am not saying that those practices are not successful. On the opposite, I believe that we are all immensely successful. The challenge is we don't always like the harvest we receive from the results of our thinking. And that is what we want to talk about. How do we change that outcome? Yep. So one of the things that's really that I enjoy about being in a space like this and being able to speak to you wherever you are, throughout the world, it's not a question about some great success story or a how-to, but really a life in practice. You see, because you have to actually live the life that you're talking about. And unfortunately, sometimes if we are not careful, we can miss that in the people that we are witnessing. We can miss the fact that that person each has their journey. And whatever it is that we get to see is only a small fraction of that, right? Not everybody in the world wants to be a superstar, nor do they want to necessarily be out in the public, but they have something specific that they want to do as a part of their journey. And that's all of us. And so what we want to be able to do wherever we are, we want to be able to live that life that we are living at the highest level that we are capable of. At whatever level that looks like for you and your stage of development and phase of life, right? So if you are 19 to 27, there's certain things that you're doing. You want to live that life to the fullest extent that you can. You want to absolutely maximize everything in it. Spare yourself nothing. Absolutely not. And when you move into the next phase of life, having done whatever it was that you wanted to do in this first phase, 19 to 27, now you're moving into another area. What is that going to look like for you? And so on and so forth. So we're all at a certain level, we want to be able to just maximize, but not in some business material sense, but I mean like what you would call joy, right? That's what we want to be able to do. For me, it's hanging out with my wife, my baubles, traveling, being outdoors, nature. That's my thing, right? For you, it may look like something else. But whatever it is, you want to express it at the highest level that you can. And you want it to be genuine too. You don't want it to be made of paper, right? You don't want it to be a life that is built on sand. Something that's not real, that does not withstand the tests of time, the challenges of stress and change. A real life is the one you want to live, right? And so for me, it gives me the pleasure to be here because I don't have to sell you. And that feels good. You give me an opportunity to speak with you, which I really enjoy. But you get to live your own life. And that should make us all happy. So we return to the idea of again, what is the self-talk? What is it telling us? How do we really use it? And how can we change it? Right? The first thing, again, I want to draw your attention to is the idea that we just simply do not fail. that we get the results of our thinking. And the more you understand what you are thinking, then you understand what you are producing in the world in which you live at every level, right? Whether it be your work life, your professional life, your relationship intimacies, all dynamics and dimensions of life will be impacted by our self-talk, right? It's a cellular experience. What we think, what we feel is expressed throughout our entire bodies and then shared with others in some form. You could say more specifically, thought plus feeling equals some behavior. So even though no one actually sees the thinking, they experience the result of the thinking and the feeling in the form of our actions. Again, the question is, do those things reflect what we really want to bring forward? If our answer sometimes is no, then that means that we want to be more in line with what we are thinking, right? Feeling and doing, because that's going to always govern the experiences that we have in life. So, to touch on it more deeply, if you struggle feeling that you are worthy of love, you want to get real clear that that is a thinking pattern that you have. And you want to understand too exactly how it impacts your thinking and your behavior. You see, you can't think you are worthy or unworthy of love and expect somehow that someone is going to overcome that. They're not going to be able to do it. And if you're listening to my voice right now and you're seeing me here, then you probably already know through your own experiences, it never works. It just doesn't. Because if the dominant message is that we are not worthy of love, then that's the successful message. You're going to succeed. You're going to ensure that your relationships at some point, at some form, are going to reflect your thinking that you are not worthy of love. It's important for you to understand, though, that you would not have failed. You would have succeeded. The question is, are you ready to change that way of thinking? So, one of the things that I like to do when it comes to my self-talk is understand how it is directly connected to my imagination. What do I want to experience? Whatever it is that I want to experience first must pass through the filter of my self-talk. If my self-talk is constrained, if it says, well, you can't have whatever it is that you might be trying to imagine, then your imagination is going to be necessarily constricted, like this screen that we're looking through. But if your self-talk supports an expansive way of seeing the world, then your imagination is going to reflect that too. You're going to be able to see more things about what you could do, right? This is what we're back to again. What do you want to experience in life? What do you want that to look like, right? The first thing we have to understand is the ways in which we prevent ourselves from having the things that we want while at the same time silently undermining that goal. So I want you to do something for me for just a second. So wherever you are listening to this, right? If you're outdoors, you're going to see a combination of things. If you're indoors, then you have a different environment altogether. And then again, if you're outside, again, another perspective. But what I want you to take notice of is your environment. notice that everything around you except the natural world. So for those of you that are looking at me here through the screen, you'll see a tree behind me, you'll see some grass, a wall, cinder block wall, and there's some metal structure around there, and a carport and these types of things. So you see a combination of natural, and you see what we would consider the material world, right? The constructed world. So what I want you to think about seriously is this. Everything that you see, everything, without exception, everything that you see that is not a part of the natural world first exists within the human imagination. I'm not the first one to say this, nor will I be the last. And thank goodness, because knowledge must be spread, right? But think about it, not in an abstract way. Put it into your body. Look around you. Everything that you see that is not a part of the natural world first existed in the imagination. From that process, thought then takes on a different form. It takes on certain types of actions. Those actions lead to various types of manifestations in our world. They can range from material construction, like a building, automobiles, airplanes, paper, pens, etc. But they can also manifest in intangible ways, emotional ways, eye contact that tells another person that they can approach you, right? The touch of a hand, the communication that says we are about to move forward in this relationship, or the dynamics that say we are at war. But all of that, all of those dynamics and everything in between, that full spectrum, first exist within the imagination. So if it exists in the imagination, then it exists in the place of thought. Your thought, your self-talk, your thinking, right? So if we understand that we are co-creators in everything that we see around us, then now we know we have the opportunity and the real possibility of making the changes in our lives that we want to achieve. But the question is desire, not how yet, but desire. What do you want to create for your life? What do you want that to look like for you individually, right? Only you can decide that. But the way you apply the self-talk will determine what that looks like for you. And I think this is an area where we get to a book that was written one time titled The Secret, and where a lot of people may have fallen off the, I guess, out of favor with the idea behind the book, which is how we manifest things. What I'm actually talking to you about today is, you could call it manifestation. You could call it whatever you want. But it all starts with the seed thought, what we're thinking, and what we want to create and what we want to experience. So if we go back to the idea of the natural environment now for just a moment. So I said, when you look around you, what you'll see is everything that it was created from the imagination, right? That is not a part of the natural world that you see around you, right? And then you have the natural world itself, right? The world from which everything springs from. When you look at the natural world, you always see a process, right? The process is always in front of you in cycles with many names, depending on where you come from, right? Many different archetypes describe the cycle of the natural world, our place within it: birth, death, rebirth, transmutation, right? All of that. But there is a part that's missed, and that is the growing season. Every cycle, everything in life, it has a growing season. So when it comes to working with the thoughts that you think habitually that you want to change, the experiences in your life that may have been unfavorable that you want to change, the pain that you have experienced in your life that is no longer here, but you experience in your memory, you want to reframe it, right? So that you can experience change and other things that reflect the life you want to experience. Again, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what type of life you live or where you come from, right? The mind is something that we all have. And the way that we talk to ourselves is something that we all experience. And we can learn how to reframe it. And the first thing is, as I said at the start of this video, is recognizing that you have never failed, right? We get exactly what we're thinking about most of the time. I didn't say you weren't disappointed. I didn't say you weren't hurt. We're not talking about trauma, so I'm not there. We are not discounting any disappointment. What I said, you haven't failed. You only learned. And let's hope you haven't refused to do that, right? So when you understand that you haven't failed, but you don't like the result that you have been receiving, you don't like the consistency of disappointments in your life, then that says we need to think differently. And to think differently, that means we have to set ourselves up for a different outcome. So here is something that is very important for you to understand. There's certain things you do not want to say. When you say I am, always replace that with a statement that is positive, even if you are struggling to do so. In the place of change, you want to make sure that you start on the right foot, right? So if you make a mistake and you tend to have this feeling, this thought, God dang it, I've made a mistake again, right? Okay, so you made a mistake. But what you don't say is that I am a bleep, 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 fill in the blank. Don't do it, right? I don't care what the situation is. Do not finish a negative statement about yourself. If we're talking about changing now, this is exactly how we do it, right? Step one, you're already successful. In that success place, you want to achieve a different outcome. So in that board meeting in your mind, in that spiritual journey that you've taken, whatever the process was that leads you to the point where you know that you want to live your life differently, then the first step is recognizing, one, that you're successful, and two, changing the way that you speak to yourself, right? Also, get a clear idea of what it is that you want to create in your life. Not someone else's vision, but your own, right? And look at the areas where you notice that require work, the places where you are challenged, right? Commit to doing that work so that you can be honest with your expectations of others, right? So in other words, if there's work that you know you have to do, commit to doing that work so that others are not being required to carry that for you. Don't make another person carry something that is yours to address, right? But once you get to that, then you will notice that possibility starts to open up for you, right? Because once you learn how to speak to yourself differently, you change the language. So this is one of those times where you get to clearly look at yourself and say, well, what do I have going on for me, right? Who am I as a person? What are my personal assets? Again, and I'm not talking about your money, right? As a matter of fact, can we kind of move beyond that? Because that type of thing comes and goes. But the real things that bring joy is far beyond that. Remember, people were having a great time before they were forced into the current economic structure that we all live in today. So just know that when you're dealing with a manufactured situation such as that, we don't want to base what I would call authentic forms of happiness in colonial material reality. Okay? So, but think about it. What is it? What do you want? What do you want to experience? What do you want to change? Right? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to commit to? Right? So I give it to you in this formula, right? Thought plus feeling equals behavior. It looks like T plus F equals B. Whatever you're thinking plus whatever you're feeling is going to be reflected in your behavior. So if you want to change the outcome, your behavior, you want to change what you are thinking. So find a way to replace that thought that might be challenging you with something that is more positive and life affirming, right? Take a walk if you need to. Go outside so you can see the horizon and produce new thoughts in your mind, which will also produce better ways so that you can feel differently about whatever opportunities may be emerging for you. It's not difficult, but it's a practice. Our lives is a practice. But the starting point, I submit to you, is going to be in the thinking. Let's commit to changing that practice. Let that thinking that you have really reflect what you want and not the things that you fear that you are currently manifesting, right? It takes some courage, but we can get it done, right? Because at the end of the day, no one grows, right? No one truly evolves in calm waters, right? We all have to move through the crisis of our lives because that is a way that you know that you grow. It's sort of like a plant that goes through and endures its first winter. You know, it has to. So just think every time you look around you again, depending on your environment, right? Everything is in a cycle, constantly evolving, right? Practicing, affirming itself. Like this tree behind me, the natural environment where you may be, right? But we're doing the same things. So just understand that. Be good to yourself. Examine your thinking. It's worth your time, right? As a matter of fact, I think you'll find great joy when you realize the true power that you have when you start changing the way that you think about yourself and the life that you can lead. Thank you. Let's talk soon.